Welcome back to ECig 101 Season 4. We're on Episode 6, looking after your RBA. So, in the previous episodes, we've looked at the tanks, we've looked at the drippers, we've looked at the coils, we've looked at what you generally tend to wick them with, which is cotton. In the previous episode, I mentioned the longevity of the coils that you can pop into your tank. Osiris, as always, Osiris 25 with the Q Mini from SX Mini. So in the previous episode, at the end of it, I talked about how long these coils can last. What we're going to look at is, we're not really going to focus on how to look after the actual tank, because all you really need to do is get an ultrasonic cleaner. It doesn't need to be an expensive one. A nice cheap one for 20 quid off of Amazon will do the trick. Ultrasonic cleaner, get some warm, not hot, warm water with one single drop. That's literally all it needs. One drop of washing up liquid like Fairy Liquid or Dawn or whatever the hell you use over in the United States. One drop. Just one. Don't go one drop. And then you just strip your entire tank down, all of it, down to the bare minimum, chuck it in your ultrasonic cleaner and let that cleaner run for a couple of minutes, and hey, that's your tank clean. That's all tanks and drippers need. Just strip it down every couple of months. That's the way I usually do it. Every couple of months, strip the entire tank down, the entire dripper down, you know, mouthpiece off, top cap off, unscrew the post hole screws, don't lose them, unscrew the post hole screws, chuck them in there, take off the O-rings, chuck them in there, and then just switch your ultrasonic cleaner on, pop the lid down, walk away, get a cup of coffee, come back and it's done. Do it every couple of months. Your tank or your dripper will thank you. Trust me, they will thank you, because here's the thing. What you're about to see is going to make some people go, "Eh, you clatty bastard." So, there's a running joke with me, right? And I think I'm the only reviewer that actually does it now. I have a nasty tendency of vaping and 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 not paying attention to what's going on inside the tank. In other words, I don't pay attention to the coil. And the only time I start to pay attention to the coil is when I'm starting to taste something that tastes a bit like caramel, which I shouldn't be tasting in the black vine, because it's a grape and plum based fruit mix. You shouldn't be tasting caramel in the black vine. And when I taste that flavour, I go, oh, a slug must have died on my coil. And you're about to see what that means. Again, don't do what I do. Do as I say. Right, don't do what I do and just keep vaping and vaping and vaping until your entire coil's covered in gunk, because trust me, your coil will not last 5, 6, 7 months if you allow that to happen. But what you're about to see is how to clean a coil that desperately needs cleaned. And to do that, I've already done the Osiris. We're going to move on to this, and you can kind of see where the mess is starting. If you look at this is a borrow tank. We haven't seen this in episode 3 and episode 4. We're going to be covering specialised tanks in block 2, which I think kicks off with episode 8, right? But you can kind of see what's going on here with that discoloration that's going on up there. Yeah, the coil in here is not in a good state. It really isn't. And my peach custard that I've got in here, there's a slight hint of a note of caramel, which shouldn't be there. Let's spin round and see what kind of state this thing's actually in, shall we? There is going to be people screaming blue murder at the screen. How did you let your coils get into that state? I do it all the time. So, let's unscrew this from this borrow device. We'll be covering borrow devices and specialty devices like borrow tank systems like this, squonkers and stuff like that, when we get into block 2, which kicks off with episode 8. This is a borrow. Oh my god, ew. Yeah, it looks like a slug's died on it. So this This is a borrow tank, and it's one of the more specialised borrow tanks with an RDTA style rebuildable dripping tank atomizer. Coils at the top, tank at the bottom. So think of this as a dripper with a tank glued onto the base of it. What we're now going to do is we are... Ew. Oh boy, yeah, thank fuck I'm not using the macro lens for this. And this is the, see the reason that I said up in the screen to clean your tanks out as well? That's why. Because what's happening here is as the coil is becoming caramelized, it's spitting some of that caramelization off and it's hitting the top. And what you're seeing here is basically caramelized food flavoring and liquid caked onto the top of your tank. This is why you should run your rebuildable dripper or your rebuildable tank through an ultrasonic cleaner at least once every 2 months. At least once every 2 months. That way you can clean this gunk off. So how we're going to tackle this? Well, we're going to do something called dry burning. Now, caveat with this. If you are using a coil that's not made of kanthal and stainless steel, or a mix of those two, dry burning is not recommended, especially if you are using a coil that's been made with nickel-based wire. In other words, a temp control based coil. So these coils that I'm using, here are based off of kanthal A1. So it's just a pure kanthal wire we've got in here, so it's safe to dry burn these things. If you're using a stainless steel based wire, it is also safe to dry burn them. Just don't dry burn them too fucking much. More about that when we actually get to the dry burn process. But if you went down the road of using temp control on your mod and you're using a nickel 200 wire, or for that matter a titanium wire, if you want to go down that stupid road of using titanium, do not dry burn your coil. Essentially what will happen is the nickel will oxidize or the titanium will oxidize and you're going to breathe that crap in. So again, only dry burn your rebuildable coil if the maker of that coil has made that coil out of kanthal A1 or stainless steel 316. That way it's going to be safe air to dry burn them. So how are we going to do this? Well, we need to get rid of that gunked up cotton first of all. And for that, I need a set of tweezers. You'll do. So we're going to get this, and we're going to basically just wiggle this out. Oh, see that? It just split. Cotton claps. That's what that's called. It's when the middle of the cotton, right in the centre of the coil, begins to burn out. And the cotton recedes back to the edge, and you're not pulling all the cotton out, you're just pulling the ends out. There's going to be people screaming at this. How did you let that get so bad? I do it all the fucking time. There we go. Cotton claps. Now what I need to do is remove this. In fact, no I don't. I just need to unscrew this. Yeah, because this is the RDTA. All I need to do is do that. And now what I've got is a 510 connection at the base. And what I can do with that 510 connection is then get a normal mod like this. I'm going to unscrew you. Going to pop you on here. Now I'm doing this with a basically empty tank because this is going to be run under cold water to cool the coil down once it's dry burned. Screw you down. And now we are going to simply pulse this, and it's going to be very, very quick pulses. And the idea is this gunked up burnt sugar, well not sugar, this gunked up burnt sweetener is slowly going to turn into ash. I think you know where I'm going with this. So you just want to do very, very quick pulses. You can see I'm just doing quick pulses. You don't want that coil to glow constantly because it will lessen the lifespan. Just quick pulses. Just like that. And that should be enough. Now, we're going to head. Now, I need to find the damn... Where is it? Do I have this thing set up yet? I think I do. Yeah. We are now going to head into the bathroom next door. So, here's what you want to do. Hot water tap. Let that run and let that water heat up. Now what you want to do is get a soft bristle brush, could be a soft bristle toothbrush or a soft bristle cleaning brush like this. You want to get this that you've just dry burned, run it under the tap, and then softly, don't get in there and scrub, just softly wipe downwards along the length of the coil, like that. Give it a second dry burn. You can already see it's already clean, but I'm just going to give it a second one anyway. Give it a second dry burn. Let that cool down. Flip it over. And then give it another just soft brush going down, just to wipe off all that gunk. Now, get the end of your brush here and you want to drive some of these bristles through the middle of the coil to clean off any gunk that could be down the centre of the coil. So just gently drive the bristles down through the coil, twist it round, do the same with the other side. And what you end up with is a gunk-free coil. The next thing that you need to do, not with the hot water, but with the cold water, the top cap here that you've seen that was covered in gunk, get your soft bristle brush, and basically just give that a good scrub. No soap in here, just normal water. That's usually enough to do it. Get in there with the bristle brush, and what you'll end up with is a nice clean cap. And there we go, folks. Done that in basically 2 minutes. Let's head back next door to the room. And we're back. So, cleaned coil here, and clean top cap. And the only thing left to do now is to basically re-wick this with the same clean coil that we've just cleaned. We're going to give this just a very, very quick blast. Very quick blast to basically dry the coil out. And now what we're going to do, now you're going to be seeing here, which is something I've just noticed, see it? It's starting to fray slightly. Now this is the thing, let's spin round here and actually talk about this. Glad that's actually happening. Now that coil that you're seeing there is I think it's a framed staple. No, it's a framed Clapton from the looks of it. That coil's been on that RDTA borrow tank for about 5 months. About 5 months. If you start seeing the outer strands of your coil start to become displaced, in other words, they're not tightly packed anymore, that coil is basically telling you it's reaching the end of its useful life. Because as you're seeing there with the close-up of that particular coil, some of those strands, they're not splitting, but they're coming apart. In other words, the outer wrap is loosening. When that begins to happen, you've probably got one more clean, and that's it, the coil's done. You'll need to replace it. So again, keep a very close eye on your coils, especially after the 3rd or 4th clean. Keep a close eye on how the actual outer wraps are performing as it's wrapped, because as those start to loosen, your coil will basically start to fall apart. It'll basically unravel. That's essentially what will start to happen. But this coil's got one more good use left in it, so we're going to re-wick this. Where are we here? So again, this coil was, in fact I got this coil from, I think it was one of the builders at the October Expo. The October Expo last year? I'm sure I got this at the October Expo last year. So yeah, it's had a good run. It's had a definite good run. Just run this through. Again, we're going to be having a look at borrow tanks in the next block, kicking off with season 8. So don't worry too much about how this borrow tank's looking. We're going to be covering that very soon. Going to go in there, snip the end, same the opposite side, snip the end, just like that. Level that out. Then we're going to get our tweezers and get our cotton and set it right on top of those wick ports. Just like that. Done. Where's my peach custard? Because that's what was running in this. Let's soak up the 2 ends. Just like that. Soak up the coil. Give it a quick run to let that juice soak in. Quick burn. Do it again. That should be it. Pop you open. Fill you up. Need to do this off cam because this bottle is almost empty. I need to tilt everything to the back slightly so it doesn't back up. There we go. Oh, it's backing up. There we go. Push you in. Our freshly cleaned top cap part. Need to line up the VPON sign with the front. And there we have it. Freshly dry burned, freshly re-wicked. We've basically got a new coil in there, although it is reaching the end of its life. Pop you off. Pop you back on. And then spin round. So here we go. Freshly dry burned and freshly re-wicked VPON tighter borrow tank on the VPON tighter borrow device. Let's screw that down. Nice and tight. There we go. Peach custard. See, and there's not a hint of a burnt caramel taste in there now. And there we go, folks. It's as simple as that. It took about 2 minutes, slightly under 2 minutes, to get that coil cleaned. And it's the same trick that you use for any rebuildable. You basically pull the cotton out, whether it's a dripper, whether it's a tank or a borrow tank like that one. Pull the cotton out, make sure the tank's empty, so you've vaped it dry essentially, and then you just pulse it. Just keep pulsing it and you'll see the coil start to glow. Don't press and hold till it gets to the stage that the coil basically turns white because you fucked the coil up. You've got to slightly glow it. And what that glowing is essentially doing is burning off the inner edge of the gunk that's surrounding your coil. So when you run it under a hot water tap and give it a brush, the brush just wipes the ash off. And what you're left with is the pure coil underneath. Also remember to get the edge of the bristles, the edge of your brush, and run the bristles through the centre of the coil, the inside of the coil, to wipe off any gunk that might have formed on the inside of that coil as well. If you do that before it gets to the stage that you've seen on the table cam, so if you do that before it gets to the bad stage, like you're beginning to see some of the caramelization happen in the middle of the coil, that's when you should really clean your coil, because the worse the gunk gets, in other words, the more gunk is formed in the coil, the longer you have to keep pulsing, and the more times you pulse your coil, the more weaker the metal starts to get. So it's always advisable to get in there with the dry pulse burning to clean the coil out before the entire coil becomes caked. Before it becomes caked. In other words, don't do what I did to this thing and just let it become caked. Don't do that. Don't do that. Regularly check your coil every 3 or 4 days to see how it's actually performing. But again, even with me abusing the fuck out of the coil in this thing, I mean, that coil's been in there since the end of October, the October Expo, because I got these coils in here from the October Expo, and they've lasted until April. Because we're in the middle of April now. That's not bad for an investment of £9.99. Because that's how much this set of coils, I've got another coil sitting in the drawer there, that's how much this set of coils costed, £9.99, and they've lasted all these months. This is why people use rebuildables. You eventually save money. You eventually save money. Peach custard with a freshly cleaned out coil, you can't beat that flavour. And there we go, folks. It's as simple as that. Once again, if you want to take care of the actual tank, the hardware, the tank itself and the dripper, just strip the tank down, strip the dripper down, buy a nice cheap £20 ultrasonic cleaner from Amazon. Warm, not hot, warm water. 1 drop of washing up liquid like Dawn or Fairy. Just 1 drop, that's all it takes. Chuck it all in. set it for a couple of minutes, walk away, make a cuppa. By the time you come back, it'll be all nice and clean. And then once you've done that, wash your tank dripper parts under cold running water to wash off any of the gunk that might still be in there. And there we have it, folks. There we have it. The most labour intensive side of looking after your tank and your dripper is what you've just seen, cleaning the coil. And that only takes 2 minutes, literally 2 minutes. That's it from me. On to the final episode of this block, which is the pitfalls and what to look out for when using rebuildables.